If you're going to be an effective leader, you have to learn the skill of disappointing people. Not every decision you're going to make is going to come with fanfare and hurrah, hoorays, as you walk down the hall. You have to make hard decisions in business, and that's going to disappoint someone. And there is an art. It's not sugarcoating. It's not trying to people please. It's saying, I respect you enough to tell you the truth of what's happening. And yeah, it's going to disappoint you. And a lot of people are just frozen by that. The idea that they're not going to like me as much as they used to like me, they're going to be upset at me, just paralyzes them. And in that, it paralyzes their business.
Welcome to Leadership, the podcast where leadership meets real-world insights. In each episode, you can eavesdrop on exclusive conversations with top thought leaders, best-selling authors, and experts in leadership, communication, relationships, culture, and everything else that shapes your effectiveness in the workplace and in your personal life. Leadership is here for you. Now, here's our host, himself a seasoned coach and best-selling author, Dr. Roger Dean Duncan.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Leadership, the podcast where we explore the mindset, skills, and behaviors that help you succeed in every relationship in your life, especially those in which people look to you for leadership. This episode is all about communication, and it's guaranteed to provide some insights that you can put to good use immediately. Let's set the stage. Conflict is everywhere, at work, at home, and increasingly online. Yet many people were never taught how to communicate in moments that matter most. Jefferson Fisher, my guest for this episode, believes the key to stronger relationships, clearer leadership, and healthier conversations is not about winning arguments. It's about learning to connect. Jefferson is a trial lawyer turned communication educator whose short-form videos on social media have reached millions. Beginning with a 47-second video recorded alone in his truck, he's built one of the most influential communication platforms in the world. More than 500 million views, millions of followers, the #1 communication podcast on the charts, and a best-selling book titled The Next Conversation, Argue Less, Talk More. His message is deceptively simple. You probably already know what you want to say. What you need is help with how to say it. Jefferson's framework, rooted in real courtroom experience, family storytelling, and hard-won wisdom, offers leaders something rare: practical tools that actually work under pressure. Okay, folks, get ready to take notes. Jefferson Fisher, welcome to Leadership.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here.
Your first 47-second video was recorded on your phone, in your truck, unscripted, with your daughter's pink car seat and your son's sippy cup visible in the background. Why do you think that simple down-home approach was such a hit?
Because it was real. It was exactly where I was in life, and in many ways still am. And not trying to be something that you're not. I think a lot of people video themselves and they feel like they have to put on the perfect outfit or perfect background, perfect lighting, when I think all people really want is something to relate to. And the fact is, nobody's perfect.
Yeah, just a real guy talking to people.
That's right.
So what feedback from followers has impacted you most?
When I get the message that they tried it and it worked, they decided to do something different, to use some of my advice, and their life turned a different way. These messages where people can say things from I've changed their life to things that I've helped them in a job, I've helped them in a relationship. And it means a lot to me to be able to do good, to put out good, and to be a conduit for what I believe is a message of light and what the world very much needs. And the cool part about it is it affects people I'll never get to see and people I'll never get to meet. And that's a very big privilege.
So what is your process for creating content that connects? You're on social media a lot. How do you create the content? It's a lot of content.
It is a lot of content. At least it looks like it. I did about, I'd say a year, at least a year and a half of video almost every day. But I did it in a way that it fit my life, not making my life fit it. So I would make these videos just with my phone, holding my phone in my hand, no tripod, no setup, in my car after, a full day at the law firm. And I did them to where they would be less than 1 minute, short, punchy, practical advice. And it's gotten to where now, I don't even have social media on my phone, really. I make videos and then I send them to somebody who posts them because I realize how much just being on social media can be a drain. And sometimes it's not good for you.
Yeah.
Even when you have lots of followers, it's not real life. And so it's something that you have to take with a grain of salt. And with somebody who has a big platform, it can be both lonely and it can be you feel exposed in a way of how many eyeballs are on you. And it helps me that when I make content to just think of one person. I just think of one person I'm making that video to and talking to. And that's the feeling I want. Because really, it just says one person who's watching it.
Well, that's the feeling that comes across, I'll tell you, because I get your emails sent by somebody else. Of course, you do the videos. I get them multiple times a week. And I feel like my friend Jefferson is just reaching out to me, realizing,
right,
of course, that you're reaching out to millions of people. But so as a communication approach, you suggest a mindset that you call never win an argument. Now, that seems counterintuitive coming from a trial lawyer. Please unpack that for us. What do you mean, and why is winning the wrong goal?
We see all these books, these blogs on win every argument, win, win, win.
Yeah.
There hasn't been an argument that I've won that I did not lose a lot more. I didn't regret. Usually the argument that I won, that means I'm generally the first to apologize. That's what that means. Because I've decided that I have to be right. Who wants to be around the person who always has to be right? What I teach is that when you set out to win an argument, you end up losing the relationship. Like you might win that point now, but if you have to win the next one and the next one, well, you're losing the quality of that relationship. All you've won is contempt. You've won resentment. You've won awkward silence. And that's not a good place to be. Instead of seeing arguments as something to win, you see them as something to unravel, like a knot in a fishing line or a kink in a water hose. You have to find a way to let things flow through. Otherwise, what happens is you pull your way and I pull mine, and the knot just gets harder to undo, or it gets so bad that it's just not worth addressing. And that's where relationships fail. That's where friendships fail, where it becomes, it's like a backlash on an open face reel. It's just so much, you kind of have to just cut it, throw it out. You can't undo it.
Right. Now, you identify 3 types of emotional triggers that put people on the defensive: social evaluation, personal identity, and loss. Which of these do you see most often derailing conversations in professional settings?
Far and away, social evaluation. Far and away. In professional settings, there is this natural culture of comparison, natural culture of competition, which is, healthy in, of course, a capitalistic society, but also it can be corrosive to the extent that I want to name drop. I want to share a story that's even bigger and better, and I'm comparing, and now I'm measuring. I mean, you put 4 men together in suits, and you're going to have a competition for who's the top dog.
Yeah.
And same for, men and women in the workplace. We're constantly seeing what other people are doing, and it's easy to also feel insecure that, well, my job doesn't matter, so I need to talk more. I need to over-explain. I don't feel like I'm doing enough, so maybe I need to do more. And all of a sudden, my priorities are mixed up, and all of a sudden, I'm afraid to speak up, and now I have to be hesitant. Now I feel like I'm walking on eggshells and I'm people pleasing. It can get to a bad spot of social evaluation looks at it and says, will I be accepted just as I am? And that's where you get into the fear of making mistakes, the fear of being wrong, when it is actually the fact that you know you will be wrong is what gives you that confidence.
Yeah, you're going to be human.
Yeah.
So effective communication, you point out over and over, requires connection. And you define connection as a two-factor authentication, requiring both understanding and acknowledgement. Why does acknowledgement so often get left out of the equation? Can you give us an example?
Yeah, imagine, Roger, you telling me a story about something that's important to you, something that's really meaningful, that a moment in your life that meant something to you. And you just get done telling it to me, and you finish your sentence, and I say, yeah, well, when I did this, and I start telling a story that's even bigger or better in my eyes, do you feel at all like I appreciated what you shared and what
Not
you
so
gave?
much.
Not so much, and we do that even with some of our best friends, or we do it just acquaintances, people that you have the chance to connect to, but we miss it because we want to be better than the other person because of that insecurity. So it's like somebody asks about how your day, and you tell them about your day, and rather than going, okay, well, hey, what was your favorite part? Oh, that sounds like it meant a lot to you, or that sounds really stressful. I can imagine that.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty rough. Like affirming, validating, acknowledging the gift of conversation they just gave you, rather than internalizing it and saying, oh, wait, their weekend sounded much cooler than mine. I need to make myself sound way cooler. You can have so much connection with somebody when you simply just choose to validate or ask one more question. And so I say two-factor authentication because if I don't acknowledge you, you're not going to connect with me. At the same time, if I don't understand you, I'm not going to connect with you. So there has to be this balance of two gateways being opened to have flow in the conversation, because those people in your life that you've gotten a conversation in, and all of a sudden you blink and it's been 40 minutes because you've just been in such good conversation with each other, and you're in it rather than feeling like it's a greasy wheel that you have to grind.
I used to practice this with our children many years ago when they'd come home from school. I started, like a lot of parents, saying, how was your day? Fine. That was it. And then I learned to ask, tell me about the best part of your day. What did you learn? Tell me what you did with your friends today. I started asking questions that elicited a little more. And then I learned to ask things like, well, tell me more. What else happened? And it was amazing how they opened up. Well, that works with people of any age.
That's right. I tell my daughter, what I do with my kids, my son is 8, my daughter's 6. I'll ask him, I'll say, did you laugh at anything today? What did you laugh at today?
Right.
Or I'll say, what did you get mad about today? And usually, that's where I start to get something. And my daughter will be like, Cameron, I had this toy and she took it, and it's like, I'm actually getting information. Or my son, I get him, what did you laugh at today? So-and-so pulled some prank while they were playing spy games. It's asking that deeper layer question always helps.
Now, your next conversation mindset asks people to shift from fighting the past to building toward what's next. How do you help someone make that mental shift in the middle of a heated moment?
You can't do it without the ability to self-regulate. If you can't regulate yourself in that moment, you will stay tunnel visioned. And what will happen is it'll be 30 minutes later, and you 30 minutes later, if you're lucky, and go, how did we even get here? What were we first talking about?
How did it derail so much?
Yeah. What were we talking about? What were we arguing about? If you don't have the ability to what I call say it with control. Meaning, before you try to control them, you first control you. And you do that with self-regulation, to be able to breathe, the use of pauses, to add time into the conversation. It's like, I compare it to, my daughter, she likes to do it herself now, but when she was 4, I got to comb her hair. Well, there are times when there's tangles. If I just got that brush and just rip through, it would be terrible.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
What you have to do is you have to grab, strand by strand and pick out the tangle. You can't, it's not something that can happen one big swift movement. You have to be able to go into the details and parse out. Same thing in conversation. You can't just affect change with one big scrape of the brush. You have to be able to tease out the issues. And you can't do that unless you slow down the conversation. That's how you first begin to put a new frame on it.
And of course, that requires listening to learn rather than listening to prepare your rebuttal.
That's right. A lot of people only listen to respond, not listen to understand.
Yeah. What's the most important thing to understand before engaging someone that you've already labeled in your mind as difficult? That happens a lot in the workplace, of course.
Yeah. Well, it happens a lot with the person you're married to and
well,
you.
It could.
Yeah. Yeah, it could. That's right. What I try to think of is, first, when I run into a difficult person, is asking, are they difficult because I've made them so? I can be difficult too, is the first thing to understand. If I stop looking at my external observation and instead start considering the internal personal observation, things go better. Let me give you an example. If I'm running late to a meeting, I feel like everybody should be really forgiving. Why? Because traffic and I was running late. I'm not lazy or anything. I'm just running late. And I feel like that's excusable. But if somebody else is late, what's the tendency? Tendency is not thinking, oh, they just got caught up in traffic. It's, well, they must not care, or they must be lazy. And you start to think negative.
They're disrespecting.
Exactly. So it's that bias that we have to devalue the personal excuse, and instead we amplify the more negative observational side of things. So if I see somebody who's difficult, I like to apply this maybe approach, where it's maybe they're having a bad day, maybe they're hungry, maybe something's happening in their lives that I don't know about. Maybe they're experiencing loss or struggle. That's really what it is. Like, I compare a lot of things to my kids because I see myself so much in my kids. When my son was small and, he's screaming or he's acting out, it's so easy to go, oh, he's just sleepy. He's sleepy. He's hungry. He's tired. And all of a sudden, I'm able to excuse that difficultness. But here, as an adult, our problems only expand. So maybe it is that they're having a hard day. Maybe they've had loss in their family that I don't know anything about. It's being able to step out of, why am I calling them difficult, and what else could be happening behind the scenes? Now, let me say, there are some people who are just flat out difficult, and there are things that they're going to do and that you can't control and change because they've been that way since they were probably, 12 or 11.
But you can control how you respond to their difficult.
Absolutely. There we go. Yeah. So that's when it gets to, rather than controlling them, you have to control yourself. But I always try to put on that frame of maybe.
Well, let's expand on this just a little bit. Before they step into a difficult talk, you encourage people to consider the question, how will I show up for myself? How does that particular question help?
I want to make sure that I'm the same person before the conversation as I am after the conversation. There are times in my life where I get done with the conversation and I go, why did I say that? That wasn't me. That wasn't me. I acted out, what we'd say down south, you showed your rear. Yeah, you didn't put on a good face. You could have, but you didn't. And being able to say, hey, look, what's the legacy that I want to leave? I believe that what you say is who you are. The words you choose, it says more about your personality than probably anything else. There's that quote, I'm going to butcher it, but it's, people remember you not for what you did, but how you made them feel.
Yeah.
And that has to do with what you said to them. If you say ugly words, you'll be known as a rude, ugly person. You say nice things, people say, yeah, hey, that's a nice person. It's the taming the tongue is a never-ending journey.
Yeah. Well, it can be a pretty good feeling when somebody comes to you and says something like, last week in that conversation, I realized I was really acting like a jerk, but you handled it really nicely. Thank you. I was having a bad day. Wow.
That's right. You want to be the person who always has their integrity.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't matter. There are some people who need, if I'm at a bad place and you and I are in an argument, I need you to be that person who's going to be steady, because right now I'm not.
Yeah.
And then next week it might be the reverse.
Exactly. And if you do a good job in handling a conversation with a so-called difficult person, usually the next time it's going to be easier.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the next time it will be easier.
They're going to see it differently. Well, Jefferson, in teaching about the use of silence and pauses, you say that silence is wisdom in waiting. Where does our cultural discomfort with silence actually come from?
Right now, there is this sense of reward we get for being fast. You see the nightly talking heads on the news. Right. You see, Twitter or whatever it's called now. These quick, fast clapbacks that people have. It's, what went from handwritten letters is now 2-second texts.
Right.
And naturally, there are things positive, but there are also things that are bad about it, where you could grab somebody's letter, and I actually want to think about what I'm writing. You can't write a letter without actually thinking about what you're writing with your hands. It's a physical process. Text is, you can say something, flip it, and not give it two thoughts, and all of a sudden they have it. And there is so much wisdom in being able to slow down a conversation. I would much rather, if you and I are in an argument and you say something that's biting, I'm going to look in a position of control when I say, yeah, I'm going to need some time to think about how I'm going to respond to that. I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Yeah.
You see how all of a sudden it's like, I've chosen to keep my integrity. I've put a cold shower on the conversation. And tomorrow we're going to have something different. It's not going to be like I could have chosen to bite back and only escalate the problem.
Your change initiative has the budget. The strategy looks solid, and everyone's nodding along in the meetings. But for some reason, it's going nowhere. Dr. Roger Dean Duncan knows why. After 40 years in the trenches with top business leaders, he knows that change fails when organizations lack the right foundations: trust, accountability, and real communication. Dr. Duncan's free 10-minute assessment shows you exactly where your organization stands. Answer a few straightforward questions that reveal your true change readiness level. Don't waste months discovering the hard way. Get your free assessment today at leadershop.net/change. Again, that's leadershop.net/change.
Well, I'm blessed to live with a very, very smart woman, my dear wife. And years ago, long before emails, I drafted a memo to a work colleague that I was upset with. And I showed the memo to my wife. And she said something to the effect, honey, you've laid out all the issues, your positions, and you've said what you feel like you need to say. I recommend you put that memo in your desk drawer and leave it there for at least 24 hours, and then read it again. And if you still feel you need to send it, send it. Well, guess what, Jefferson? I did some editing. And And so, I mean, that was a long pause, but that taught me a lot about conversations.
Absolutely. You wait till the next day.
Nobody's going to jump on you if you pause a few seconds to think. Now, you describe the power of a well-timed pause to signal confidence, not hesitation. What are the different messages that you think a pause sends, depending on where in a conversation it falls?
Well, you can have more of a dramatic pause in conversation. If I need you to focus on a particular word, it's just that. It's that 2 to 3 second pause to be able to say, hey, look, this is really something that I'm trying to put emphasis on, kind of put a stamp on it. You have ones that are 5 to 7 seconds. In my mind, those are ones that are signaling thinking, analyzing, choosing, putting intention. If you ask me a question and I wait 5 to 7 seconds, or even 3 seconds, or I just simply said, let me think.
Yeah.
People appreciate that you take time to put intention behind your words. We think that if I respond fast, it makes me look better, when typically that's not the case. If you were to ask me, say, hey, Jefferson, how are you? And I say, good, Roger. No, I'm good. Everything's good. Good. Versus you asking me, hey, Jefferson, how are you? And I take 3 seconds and I said, you know what, Roger, I'm good. I'm good. Which one sounds like more of the truth? The one who had the rapid fire response, or somebody who took just 3 to 4 seconds to say, I'm listening, I'm analyzing, I'm actually thinking about what I'm going to give you. Why? Because I care about what I'm about to say. And so how do you apply this in everyday life? When somebody asks you a question at work or even at home, I think it's a great tool to be able to verbalize that pause, to say, let me think. I want to think about this, and then answer.
Right. And a lot of our conversations tend to be perfunctory because we've had similar conversations thousands of times. I have formed the habit, and I have found it interesting to see the responses to this. When people say, like somebody at the bank says, how are you today? Well, in the past, I would have said, fine, how are you? And it would have just kind of gone over our heads. Now, when somebody says, how are you today? My response is, I am very happily married to the girl of my dreams. And they typically will drop their pen and look at me and say, one woman recently raised her hand and said, well, praise the Lord. And we had a nice conversation because we connected, and it wasn't just a perfunctory fine. So,
I agree. I think the times that you can build in creativity, you can build in saying something different, just choosing to say something different that's not that perfunctory thing, opens up different channels that you didn't even know exist.
Sure. I have found that particular response has opened up some really interesting conversations where I really feel like I connected with somebody. It wasn't just a transaction. Well, Jefferson, one of your communication rules is say it with confidence. You make the point that you don't have to be an assertive person to speak assertively. The words do the work. What are some specific language patterns that create that effect?
If you want to say things with more confidence, I would say, one, you need to watch the excessive apologies where you say, I'm sorry, in every other sentence. Hey, so sorry. Quick question. Or, hey, so sorry, I'm just now getting back to you. And it's like, it's only been 10 minutes. What are you apologizing for? Instead of apologies, you turn that to words of gratitude to say, hey, thank you for your patience. I appreciate the chance to reply. Thank you for giving me the time to think on this. And when you say, like, if you're in an email and say, hey, thank you for the patience, the other person just thinks, oh my gosh, I am so patient. Yes, I am. Like it's like giving them a sense of a compliment, so to speak, for the time. Another thing you want to do and watch for confident words is remove the excessive adverbs, the words that end in ly. So that's a lot of your literally clearly, basically, obviously, actually,
Right.
just, so. I mean, any of these words that really don't add to your vocabulary. I say if you want to speak with confidence, instead of filling your sentence full of ice cubes, you got to serve your words neat. You have to find ways of sifting out the things that really just give it fluff. And another part of confidence is your tone. If you're somebody that's really rushing your words, you sound anxious, then you're going to make people feel anxious. But if I can make you feel comfortable because I sound comfortable, and I try to make it feel like when I'm with you and you're with me, we have this sense of a safety, and that you feel like there's a difference between sitting in a doctor's office in a waiting room and sitting in your grandmother's living room. One of them, you're going to feel like yourself.
Right.
What vibe are you putting with your tone and your voice? Because tone is a lot. You've had those people where you go, yeah, I hear what you said, but I don't like your tone. I don't think I like how you said that.
Yeah.
That our instinct just goes, I didn't like that. I didn't appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, another of your communication rules is say it to connect. And you introduced the concept of frames. How does the frame you choose before a conversation shape its entire trajectory? Can you give us an example?
Now, I think of a picture, a painting. A painting will look different depending on the frame that is around it. And if a frame is doing its job right, it actually enhances the painting without you even noticing. A conversational frame does the same thing, where I lay out the parameters of what we are going to talk within. In other words, I'm not going to fill us with anxiety with all these possible issues. I'm going to make it very straight to you of exactly what I want the picture to be. It's like people say, paint the picture for me. That's what I'm doing. Like, imagine that you got a text from your wife and she says, we need to talk. You don't read that and go, oh, joy, this is wonderful.
Yeah.
My bride wants to talk with me. Like, something's wrong.
What's the problem here?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Somebody, you go, I am in trouble. That's what you say. I don't know what I've done yet, but I'm in trouble. So you say, like, it's because there's all this anxiety of what do we want to talk about? Now, what does a frame sound like? Number one, you tell them what you want to talk about. What's the topic? What's the subject? Two, you tell them how you want the conversation to end. What I like to say is what I want to walk away from, what I want to take away from the conversation. What is the point, the destination, the goal of why I'm asking us to talk? And three, I want to get your buy-in into the conversation, where this is something that I want you in it with me. So it could sound like this. I could say, hey, Roger, I'd like to talk to you about something that was important to me. It's some comments you made at last Wednesday's meeting, and I want to walk away feeling like you and I are on the same page. Is that okay? And what happens is you kind of nod, and then you know exactly what the conversation's about. Or maybe it's something that's more harsher. It could be, you need to talk to an employee. Say, hey, I want to talk to you about some comments you made at last Thursday's meeting, and I want to walk away with the understanding that's not going to happen again. That work? You're making it very clear of what it's going to be and what it's going to be about, rather than the we need to talk. And you leave it to every issue. Because if you have everything to talk about, you have nothing to talk about.
Well, especially if you send a text that says we need to talk. Can you imagine, and I'm sure you can, the monsters of the mind
Oh, yeah.
that come up in the recipient?
Yeah. Oh, it's crushing. It's like getting an email from your boss that says, come into my office. You go,
Yeah.
What have I done? It only breeds anxiety. And so if the goal of a good communicator in setting up a frame is to remove the anxiety, it's natural for us. We want to know, is there a bear behind the bush? I want to know what the conversation is going to be about. And good communicators put that plainly on the table.
So what do you see as the single most costly communication failure in leaders? The one that silently erodes their influence before they even know it's happening?
The inability to disappoint people well. And if you're going to be an effective leader, you have to learn the skill of disappointing people. Not every decision you're going to make is going to come with fanfare and hurrah, hoorays, as you walk down the hall. You have to make hard decisions in business, and that's going to disappoint someone. And there is an art to making sure that it's not sugarcoating. It's not trying to people please. It's saying, I respect you enough to tell you the truth of what's happening. And yeah, it's going to disappoint you. And a lot of people are just frozen by that. The idea of somebody going, oh, but they're not going to like me as much as they used to like me. They're going to be upset at me. Just paralyzes them. And in that, it paralyzes their business. Because you'll know people who they should have gotten rid of that employee 8 months ago, and they've wanted to, but they don't know how to do it. And so it causes a lot of fear. Or they don't do it well. They just decide to slash and burn and cause a lot more damage. They don't use a scalpel. They just use an axe.
Right. Sledgehammer.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, you say that, and I love this, conflict is an opportunity, a catalyst for real, meaningful connection. Now, most organizational cultures treat conflict as a threat to manage or suppress. How do leaders create conditions where the conflict is an opportunity reframe is actually lived out? What can they do?
I like to say that good commuters respond to conversation. Great leaders leave room for it, meaning they welcome the conflict, the debate, the dialogue. Bad things happen in business when you silo out conversations and exclude people and you try to control all the variables. You won't. You just won't. So conflict is a catalyst in a way that everything you've done in your life that's led you to where you are, the big things have come mostly out of conflict. The people you're closest with are the people who've been through the worst with you. And it is the choice to have that bonding to lead to something else. You had to leave one job to find the one you wanted. You had to find a different relationship, break one relationship to find another. There's constantly that conflict in our life. And so when you welcome debate and realize the greater relationship I want to have someone, the greater the tolerance I must have for difficult conversation, the better things are going to happen in your life. When couples say, you know what, my spouse and I, my partner and I, we don't really have any conflict. That's great. It also makes me kind of raise my eyebrow of like, are you pushing each other to be better? Because I can tell you, anywhere in life from people and friends, there needs to be a little bit of friction to be able to grow. And I'm saying healthy friction. We don't mind that idea of saying, I got to go through some pain if I want to build muscle. I got to work if I'm going to grow and strong. But we don't really apply that to our conversations. I would much rather, instead of having the mindset of going, I don't know, I'm really not wanting to have this conversation with this person. Instead, having the mindset of, yeah, I need to have a difficult conversation with this person, but it's going to be good. There's going to be an end to it. It's what you choose to do that's going to either build that relationship or tear it down.
Yeah. Well, I've told this story before, but it's relevant now. Just before my wife and I were married, decades ago, we had this conversation. I said, you are really smart. You have an opinion about all sorts of things. I really appreciate that. And I didn't just fall off a turnip truck. I have a few opinions. I think there's a good chance that sometime we're going to argue. It might be over money. It might be over how we raise our children. It could be anything. Why don't we decide right now how we're going to disagree? And we had this conversation that has blessed us for decades. And we agreed that we would listen to each other, again, not for the purpose of preparing a rebuttal, but to understand and connect and to respect. That one conversation, that one agreement has blessed us for years and years and years.
That's awesome.
So, and it's not that complicated. It's really not that complicated. If you care about the relationship, it's not that complicated.
Yeah.
Now, at the end of your many, I don't know how many now, but many social media posts, your tagline, "Try that and follow me," has become iconic. You almost, I understand, didn't include it in that first video. What does that moment teach you about the value of spontaneity?
That if you don't leave room for a little bit of magic, a little bit of fun, a little bit of, a little bit of crazy, you might miss out on something. And I threw that in the video when I had 800 followers, which I still thought was a crazy number. And I tried to say, what do I want people to do? I want them to try it. And if they want, I want them to follow me. Make sure they know they don't have to follow this advice. They can try it if they want. Maybe it's not going to work. Maybe it does. Just try it. And yeah, there's a part of spontaneity that you have to make everything your own.
Well, it's apparently working, Jefferson, because you certainly have a following. Now, you talk about how words affect not just the person you're speaking to, but how they speak to their families and their children. What responsibility do you think leaders have knowing their communication patterns echo through the entire culture of an organization? People are watching them. What's their responsibility?
Every company and business has a voice. And the question is, do they know what voice it is? If you could personify Nike, if you could personify McDonald's, if you could personify Chick-fil-A, what would they look like? What would they sound like? What voice would they have? What language would they use? There's a difference between saying you're welcome versus saying my pleasure. There is this language that matters a lot in how we relate and how we thrive and how we build community around the brand that you have. And so you have to know what kind of voice you want to set out. I think that's easily a top 3 decision that any business leader has to make, is not only what is my personal brand, what's my personal voice, what I want to be known for and known as, and what words do I want to relate to that and use. Same for my company. How do I want people to hear me in my product, to my language, to my website, to my ads, whatever. There is always importance of knowing what kind of language that you want to systemize top down into your communication. You need to have a playbook for how you want to systemize communication.
Well, personal brand is not just about business. We all have our own personal brand in all of our relationships. And so the principles you've taught are critical to all of that. Jefferson Fisher, thank you so much for joining us on Leadership. Jefferson reminds us that every conversation is a leadership moment. His work reminds us that confidence isn't about having the perfect word. It's about being willing to speak your next one with intention. The framework is straightforward. Control yourself, speak with confidence, and connect with purpose. None of that is complicated. All of it requires practice. So here's the challenge. Pick one thing from this episode and try it over the coming week. Then notice what changes. As you move into your next meeting, family discussion, or difficult moment, remember Jefferson's challenge. Focus less on the last conversation and more on the next one. Why? Because the next conversation you have just might be the one that changes everything for the better, for you and for the person across from you. Jefferson's book is titled The Next Conversation, and now that's followed by the Next Conversation Workbook. This workbook helps you stop and work through the exact scenarios you're dealing with, the difficult coworker, the defensive family member, the conversation you've been avoiding. It includes exercises that help you practice what to say before you are in the moment. I encourage you to grab a copy of the Next Conversation Workbook. To learn more about Jefferson's work, go to jeffersonfisher.com. See how easy that is? If you found this episode valuable, please share it with your team, your network, or anyone else who could use some friendly help with their communication. And isn't that most everyone on the planet? And be sure to leave a review of our podcast. Even a single sentence fuels the algorithms that promote the great content that the Leadership podcast provides. And for free resources to help you in your leadership journey, go to leadership.net. That's leadership.net. Thanks again for joining us. Until next time, stay safe, be happy, and spread good cheer wherever you go. For Leadership, I'm Roger Dean Duncan.